Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about your research proposals and kind of how you're going to go about writing your research proposal and putting everything together from collecting your information to the actual organization of what you're going to be putting together for me to look at and for you to propose to me. If you remember, part of your collaborative essay assignment is that you have to write a research proposal, pitch it to me, and then the following week you have to pitch it to your peers. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and also stay tuned for the end of the video because you do have an assignment that goes along with this. So when you're starting to do this prompt, you're going to want to reread, and analyze the prompt. I've said it before, but one of the biggest parts of writing any assignment is that you constantly have to be looking at what the prompt says and reevaluating to make sure you're on the right track. So what is it asking you to do? How are you going to accomplish that? What sort of action steps are you going to take to get there? And what type of organization will be the most effective in reaching those goals? So let's look at the prompt itself. The first part of the prompt says the collaborative essay asks you to examine, summarize, critique, analyze, and respond to broader cultural, social, or political questions dealing with a well-designed research question. So that's kind of a mouthful, but when you're looking at a research prompt, or any prompt for that matter, you're going to want to look at the strong verbs that it includes in there. So here we have examine, summarize, critique, analyze, and respond. Keep those things in mind as kind of your roadmap to what you need to do. Constantly look back at those 5 verbs. So we know what it's asking you to do for the general essay. For the actual proposal, it asks you to write a proposal of no less than 500 words. So this should be about 2 pages long. And in those 2 pages, you need to include these 3 things. You need to declare your topic/general issue in the research question. You need to summarize the "this I believe" narrative that you're going to use as a jumping off point and how it led you to this research question and issue. And then you need to briefly discuss the 3 reliable sources that you plan to include. So you already have all of this information, and pretty much what we're doing right now is we're putting it together. We're figuring out how, like the logistics of what you're going to do and what it's going to actually look like in the end. So the first thing you're going to want to do in your proposal is to start off with the contextual information. So that means you need to state the purpose of why you're talking about what you're talking about. So why is this issue of any importance to anyone besides you and your partner? Who in the broader scheme of the world actually cares about what you're talking about? Is there something going on that would connect to what you're talking about? Is it anything beyond just writing a paper? Because if not, then it's probably not the best topic because you want it to actually have some sort of significance. You're also going to want to give some background information about why you are interested in researching this. So this is going to be your opportunity to tell us about how the "this I believe" narrative and the general issue actually connect. Now, I know that some of you picked your narrative after you did your research question and came up with your topic. That's okay, but you still need to find the connection between the two. So the connection doesn't necessarily need to be how you read the narrative and it made you think of X, Y, and Z. The connection just needs to be, yes, here is where these overlap, and here's why it's important. Then you're going to want to state your research question, and remember that this needs to be arguable. Someone needs to disagree with you, and then you're going to want to answer the research question. So what is your group's consensus at this point? It might change as we go, but hopefully not. And why do you believe this? So yes, we believe there should be capital punishment for X, Y, and Z reasons. Okay? So you've finished your contextual information, you've kind of set the stage per se for why your research is important, and at this point you're going to actually talk about the research that you've collected so far. This is where you're going to talk about what types of sources you plan to use and why you choose to use those sources. So are you using internet websites, and what types of sites are you using? Remember, we had talked about the differences between the different URLs, the differences between orgs and .coms, the differences between edus and govs, self-published websites, things like that. What types of sites are you actually using? And similarly for the journal articles, what types of journals are you using? Because journals, while they're scholarly, differ by publisher and by content. So some might be based on psychology, some might be based on mathematics, some might be based on pedagogy of teaching. But knowing that information is going to help you understand what sorts of things they normally publish. And to remember that each publication has its own motivation is really important, like we talked about with the advertising and stuff like that. So once you kind of have all this stuff in mind, you're going to want to give the reader a brief summary of what you're talking about. So this should include the brief and accurate main ideas that we talked about before. You're also going to run a review in what capacity you plan to utilize each source. So are you going to, for example, utilize these authors' theories? Are you going to utilize their assumptions about the topic that you're looking at? Are you going to actually look at their hard data research? When you come down to the statistics, things like that, or are you going to use, like, maybe they have personal examples that they could have offered that might be of helpfulness to you. So consider those things. And then you're going to want to discuss how and why it adds value to your point. So essentially, is this going to be a supporting argument, a counter argument, or is it going to be like a mixture of in between where you agree with some things that the author says and you kind of disagree with some things that the author says? And that's okay too, but just know, kind of have a plan as to what facet you want to use this information in. So let's look at a sample per se, and this is not a full example, but it's kind of just like a brief mini example of what you guys are going to be doing. So I'll read it aloud with you guys. Americans tend to believe that gender is defined by one's anatomical parts. Though this is the prevailing viewpoint, there's a small subculture of citizens whose values and cultural beliefs are shifting. These people argue that gender is not related to bodily parts, but instead is based on one's inner gender. These people would contend that a gender is something that you come to know. Megan's This I Believe article, I Am Not a Gender, explores this issue. In it, Smith insists that she is genderless. She came to the conclusion from her domestic abuse experiences as a child and as an adolescent. So in this little introductory paragraph here, I have the contextual information about prevailing viewpoints on gender in America, and I also have a really brief, actually more like a one sentence summary of what's happening in the article. Like I just gave the basics of what's going on of the This I Believe narrative. Then I move on and I say, while Smith's situation of domestic abuse is all too familiar for some, the question of gender or genderlessness is one that piqued our interest. Currently, colleges across the country are installing gender-neutral bathrooms to satisfy the needs of the LGBTQ community. This led us to the research question, should universities install gender-neutral bathrooms to keep up with the changing times or remain with female-male bathrooms to stick with the most popular viewpoint? As a group, we contend that universities should not install gender-neutral bathrooms to avoid creating opportunities for sexual assault. We presently plan to incorporate the following articles in our research. So you'll notice that in this paragraph, I connect the This I Believe narrative to the general issue at hand. There's a connection between what Megan is talking about in her article to what's going on in the world, and you see that how that gap was bridged there. And then I bring up my research question and my group's answer to that research question. So that should give you an idea of what that flow would look like. As you noted at the end of that paragraph, I said we presently plan to incorporate the following articles in our research. And then I bring up just two of my articles. So No More Women's Rooms, Why All Bathrooms Should Be Gender Neutral from Slate.com discusses the current trend of gender neutral bathrooms and includes examples of grassroots campaigns nationwide. We plan to use this article for contextual information as well as to address some concerns of these bathrooms. This article, while contextual, will be used as a counter argument. And then I have a second example that is kind of along the same lines. But you'll notice that I have a little bit of a summary. It's just enough so that me, the reader, will know what's going on. I talk about a little bit of what capacity I'm going to use in, and then I talk about how it's going to add value to my research. The one thing I didn't mention here that you might want to include in yours is, what is Slate.com known for? What is Huffington Post known for? And then I would probably include a sentence about the actual motivations of that publication, because that would be important to what I'm talking about. So these examples here could be fleshed out more for sure. But another thing that you'll notice is that I have a mixture of prose, these 2 paragraphs up here, and bulleted points, because I felt like for me as a writer, that would be the most effective way to organize it. You and your group might want to do something different. You might want to do all bullet points. You might want to do some sort of graphic-y type of a thing for proposing it. Consider how you're going to actually do it and make a conscious effort into what that formatting and organization is going to look like, because that is part of the assignment, knowing how you're actually going to write about these things. And then I would obviously end with some sort of a conclusion, but I just wanted to give you guys a general example of what something like this could look like. So keep these things in mind. This should be a roadmap that directs you when you're writing your paper. So once you're done with the proposal, you propose it to me, you propose it to your classmates, this should give you an idea for how you're going to develop your actual thoughts and the content of your paper and the purpose of what it's going to look like. It should give you an idea of the organization and flow that your paper is going to take, and it should give you an idea of what your own voices as a partnership will sound like. Something that we've been working on this semester is coming up with your own voices. I know I've written that a lot in your papers, and this will be an interesting opportunity for you to develop a kind of unique voice, because it's 2 to 3 people writing one paper. Also remember that you will have to present your proposal to your peers, so keep these things in mind. And then lastly, here's your assignment right down here. Post your answers to the following questions down below in the comment section of the actual YouTube video. So what did you find most helpful about this lecture? What did you find most puzzling or confusing? So what areas are you still trying to kind of get a handle on? And then I want you to answer the peer who posted before you, okay? So if you don't have a YouTube account, just quickly sign up. It just takes your email, and then go ahead and answer those questions down below. It'll be a good way for me to know whether or not you did it. If you don't use your name in your email, then, or the actual username that you came up with, then make sure you write your name down below, just your first name and maybe your last initial. Don't put your full name. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions. Always feel free to email me, and I look forward to seeing what you guys wrote down below. Thanks.